Imagine building 100 race cars, factory race cars, selling each one at a $2,000 loss, dominating every drag strip in America, setting records, winning championships, and then the sanctioning body changes the rules specifically to stop you. Not because your car is unsafe, not because you cheated, but because you are winning too much. February 1964. The NHRA Winternationals. A white Ford Fairlane pulls to the line. Fiberglass body. Plexiglas windows. A 427 cubic inch monster under that bulged hood. Gas Ronda hits the throttle. 11.80 seconds. 122 miles per hour. A new super stock record. The final round? Thunderbolt versus Thunderbolt. Ford owns the class. By mid-season, the NHRA has seen enough. New rule: minimum 500 production cars required for super stock. Ford built 100. Ford loses. $2,000 per car, gone. The most dominant factory drag car ever built, legislated out of existence. This is the 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. The car Ford bled money to build. The car that was too good. And this is how the NHRA killed it. Section 2. The factory wars begin. To understand why Ford went absolutely insane building the Thunderbolt, you need to understand the early 1960s. This was the golden age of American muscle. But more than that, it was war. Corporate war. Ford versus Chevy versus Mopar. Every Sunday, millions of Americans watched NASCAR. Every weekend, thousands packed drag strips. And the manufacturers knew something critical: win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Racing success translated directly into showroom sales. Directly into profits. By 1963, the battle was getting serious. Chevrolet had their Z11 Impala program. Lightweight bodies, big block power, winning races. Mopar had their max wedge cars tearing up tracks. And Ford? Ford was getting embarrassed. Their full-size Galaxies were competitive in NASCAR, sure. But in NHRA super stock drag racing, they were getting destroyed. Absolutely humiliated weekend after weekend. Ford's top brass, led by racing director Jacques Passino, made a decision. They were going to build a purpose-built factory drag car. Not a street car that could race. A race CR that happened to have a VIN number and could technically be registered. They would use their mid-size Fairlane platform for better weight distribution. Strip out everything that did not make it faster. Add everything that did. And they would hire the best builder in the business to make it happen. That builder was Dearborn Steel Tubing. The same guys building Ford's factory NASCAR racers. They knew how to make cars go fast. They knew how to work with fiberglass. They knew how to build winners. Ford gave them one mission: build us something that will absolutely dominate super stock. Money is no object. Just win. And that is exactly what they set out to do. The Thunderbolt program was born. And it would become the most expensive, most dominant, and ultimately most controversial factory drag car ever created. Section 3. Building a monster. Dearborn Steel Tubing started with a standard 1964 Ford Fairlane two-door sedan. Then they tore it apart and rebuilt it as a purpose-built race weapon. Every single modification had one goal: go faster. Weight reduction was obsessive. The front fenders? Fiberglass, not steel. The hood with that massive teardrop scoop? Fiberglass. The doors? Fiberglass. The front bumper? Lightweight fiberglass replica. Even the door glass was replaced with Plexiglas to save precious pounds. Inside, it was even more radical. No back seat. Just a lightweight fiberglass shelf. No sound deadening. No extra insulation. The heater was deleted. The radio was gone. Even the passenger sun visor was removed to save ounces. Every single unnecessary item was stripped out. This was not a car you would want to daily drive. This was a race car with license plates. But here is where it gets really interesting. The engine. Ford's massive 427 cubic inch high-riser V8. Factory rated at 425 horsepower, but that was a lie for insurance purposes. Real dyno numbers? Somewhere between 500 and 600 horsepower depending on tune. Dual 4-barrel Holley carburetors sitting on a high-rise aluminum intake manifold. Headers. Solid lifter camshaft. This thing was an absolute monster. The transmission was purpose-built too. A Lincoln automatic, modified and strengthened specifically for drag racing abuse. But here is the genius part. They moved the battery to the trunk for better weight distribution. They used an aluminum driveshaft to reduce rotational mass. They fitted the lightest wheels they could find. Every detail was obsessively engineered for one thing: maximum acceleration. The result? A car that weighed about 3,400 pounds, which was incredibly light for a full-size American car in 1964. With over 500 real horsepower and aggressive gearing, the performance was absolutely devastating. Ford's internal testing showed consistent mid-11-second quarter-mile times at over 120 miles per hour. In 1964, those numbers were absolutely insane for a production-based car. Ford knew they had something special. They knew they had a winner. Now they just had to build enough to satisfy NHRA homologation rules and get them to racers. Section 4. The Production Nightmare. Here is where Ford's brilliant plan hit a massive, unexpected problem: cold, hard economics. Building these Thunderbolts was incredibly expensive, far more than anyone at Ford Motor Company had initially anticipated. Each car required extensive hand assembly by skilled craftsmen who knew what they were doing. The fiberglass panels had to be fitted individually, carefully aligned and bonded to the steel structure. The engines were hand-built racing units, not mass-production power plants rolling off automated assembly lines. The modifications took skilled technicians hours and hours of meticulous work to complete properly. Every Thunderbolt was essentially a custom-built race car. Ford's accountants did the math and the numbers were absolutely brutal, almost unbelievable. Each Thunderbolt cost Ford approximately $6,000 to build when you factored in all the specialized parts, custom fabrication labor, extensive development costs, and dedicated engineering time. The MSRP they could actually charge customers in the real market? About $3,900. Do that simple math. Ford was losing roughly $2,000 on every single Thunderbolt they sold. $2,000 per car in 1964 money. That is equivalent to losing somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000 per car in today's inflated currency. Absolute corporate insanity from a pure business perspective. Any accountant looking at those numbers would have killed the program immediately. But Ford's top management, led by Henry Ford II and racing director Jacques Passino, made the gutsy call: do it anyway. Build them. Lose the money. The racing prestige was worth it. The magazine coverage was worth it. The publicity was worth it. The showroom traffic it would generate across America was worth it. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday was not just a catchy saying in Detroit, it was absolute gospel truth. Racing success moved metal off dealer lots. So they authorized a production run of exactly 100 units. That was the NHRA's minimum requirement for super stock homologation at the time. Build 100 matching cars, prove they exist, and you could race them in the class competitively. Ford built exactly 100. Not 101. Not 99. Exactly 100 units to meet the letter of the law. Production happened incredibly fast once the decision was made. Between February and April 1964, just 3 short months, all 100 Thunderbolts were hand-assembled at Dearborn Steel Tubing's specialized facility in Michigan. Each one received a special serial number sequence for tracking and documentation. Most were painted Wimbledon white, the classic Ford racing color, though a handful came in Rangoon red, vintage burgundy, and a few other special colors for specific customers. Every single one was shipped directly to carefully selected Ford dealers across the country who had committed buyers waiting with cash in hand. These were not cars that sat on showroom floors collecting dust and taking up space. These were pre-sold to serious racers who knew exactly what they were getting and what they planned to do with them. And those racers? They were getting the absolute deal of a lifetime. A genuine factory-built race car for less than $4,000. Yes, it was expensive money for 1964 standards when the average new car cost $2,500. But for what you actually got, the performance, the engineering, the hand-built quality, it was an absolute steal. Ford was literally subsidizing their racing careers, bleeding serious corporate money so they could go out and win races. Buyers knew it. Ford dealers knew it. Ford executives knew it. And nobody cared about the losses because they were about to start winning races. Lots and lots of races. The Thunderbolts hit the drag strips in early 1964 and immediately started destroying the competition. It was not even close. The very first major event was the NHRA Winternationals in February at Pomona, California. Gas Ronda, driving a Tosca Ford-prepared Thunderbolt, absolutely dominated the super stock eliminator class. His winning time? 11.80 seconds at 122 miles per hour. A new super stock record. And the final round? Thunderbolt versus Thunderbolt. Ford 1-2 finish. Over the next few months, it was complete carnage. Every major NHRA event, Thunderbolts were winning or filling the top positions. The NHRA Spring Nationals? Thunderbolt wins. Regional events across the country? Thunderbolts everywhere. It was not just that they were fast. It was that they were consistently fast and reliable. Other factory drag cars were fragile. They broke. They scattered parts. The Thunderbolts just kept running, kept winning, kept setting records. Ronda became the face of the Thunderbolt program. He went on to win the 1964 NHRA Super Stock World Championship driving his white Thunderbolt. But he was not alone. Dozens of other racers across America were having success with their Thunderbolts. Phil Bonner, Butch Leal, Les Ritchie, all winning races. The Thunderbolt was doing exactly what Ford built it to do, dominate. Chevrolet and Mopar were furious. They had their own programs, their own fast cars. But nothing could touch the Thunderbolts in Superstock. The Ford engineering was just too good. The power-to-weight ratio was unbeatable. The reliability was exceptional. Other manufacturers complained to the NHRA. This is not fair, they said. Ford is building pure race cars and calling them production vehicles. The rules need to change. And the NHRA listened. See, the NHRA had a delicate balancing act. They wanted factory involvement because it brought publicity, brought sponsor money, brought fans to the tracks. But they also needed to keep the racing somewhat competitive. When one manufacturer dominates too much, fans lose interest. Other manufacturers threaten to pull out. So the NHRA started looking at the rules. Started looking for ways to level the playing field. And in mid-1964, they found their solution. A rule change that would kill the Thunderbolt program dead. Section 6. The Rule Change. Summer 1964. The NHRA announces new rules for super stock competition effective immediately. The key change? Minimum production requirement increased from 100 units to 500 units. Any car not meeting the new 500-unit threshold would be reclassified or banned from superstock. The announcement sent shockwaves through the racing community. Everyone knew exactly what this meant. This was aimed directly at Ford. Directly at the Thunderbolt. Ford had built exactly 100 Thunderbolts. Exactly the old minimum. They had no plans to build more because each car was losing them $2,000. Building 500 units would mean losing $1 million. In 1964 money, that was corporate suicide. No racing program, no matter how successful, was worth losing $1 million. Ford's accountants and executives had a meeting. The decision was quick and unanimous. We are done. The Thunderbolt program is terminated immediately. No more production. No more development. It is over. Existing Thunderbolt owners could still race their cars, technically. But they would be reclassified into different classes where they would not be competitive. The NHRA was smart about it. They did not technically ban the Thunderbolt. They just changed the rules in a way that made it impossible for Ford to continue the program. It was legislation, not prohibition. And it was devastatingly effective. Other manufacturers had similar problems. Chevrolet's Z11 program? Did Mopar's lightweight race cars? Affected. But Ford got hit the hardest because the Thunderbolt was the most extreme, the most purpose-built, the most dominant. The rule change essentially killed factory super stock drag racing as it existed. The manufacturers pulled back. The huge budgets disappeared. The programs were cancelled. The NHRA's reasoning was officially about fairness and competition. Unofficially, they were scared. Scared of an arms race they could not control. Scared of manufacturers building increasingly extreme cars that were race cars in street car clothing. Scared of what would come next if they did not pump the brakes. So they changed the rules and stopped it cold. The Thunderbolt, the most dominant factory drag car ever built, was legislated out of existence after just one season. One glorious, dominant, expensive season. Section 7. The Aftermath. The Thunderbolt owners were devastated but not defeated. They had these incredible race cars that suddenly had no class to run in competitively. So they adapted. Some moved to match racing, where factory stock rules did not matter. Some modified their cars further and moved into faster modified classes. Some just kept racing them for fun at local tracks. The cars were too good, too fast, too much fun to just park in garages. Ronda kept racing his championship-winning Thunderbolt. He moved into faster classes, made modifications, kept winning races. Other Thunderbolt owners did the same. The cars developed a legendary reputation. If you saw a Thunderbolt pull up to a drag strip in the mid-1960s, you knew you were about to see something special. These were not trailer queens. These were working race cars being driven hard by people who loved them. Ford officially walked away from factory drag racing support after 1964. The Thunderbolt program had cost them too much money and ended in frustration with rule changes. They redirected their racing budget toward NASCAR and road racing where the rules were more stable. The message was clear: we tried drag racing, we dominated, and we got legislated out. Why continue? But the Thunderbolt's legacy was just beginning. Over the decades, these cars became increasingly collectible. Only 100 were ever built. Many were crashed, modified beyond recognition, or scrapped. Survivors became incredibly valuable. By the 1980s and 1990s, collectors were searching for original Thunderbolts and paying serious money for them. These were historic race cars, pieces of Ford performance history. Today, an original, documented 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt in good condition is worth anywhere from $200,000 to over $500,000 depending on provenance and race history. Gas Ronda's championship car? Priceless. The car Ford lost $2,000 on in 1964 is now worth more than most houses. The irony is beautiful. Ford bled money building these cars for one racing season. Now they are among the most valuable and sought-after muscle cars in existence. The Thunderbolt did something revolutionary that influenced drag racing and muscle cars for decades after. It proved that lightweight body panels worked. After the Thunderbolt, fiberglass became standard in factory drag racing. It showed that weight reduction was just as important as horsepower. Strip the car, make it lighter, go faster. That became the formula. The engine technology filtered down too. That 427 high riser became legendary. Ford kept developing it, kept refining it. It powered countless race cars through the 1960s. The dual 4-barrel carburetor setup, the high-rise intake manifold design, the header configurations, all of it became standard practice. What Ford learned building 100 Thunderbolts educated an entire generation of engine builders and racers. The Thunderbolt also established something important: the factory lightweight muscle car concept. Before the Thunderbolt, manufacturers built fast cars, sure. But the Thunderbolt was different. It was a manufacturer saying, we are building a race car and selling it to you. That concept exploded after 1964. Chevy built the Copo Camaros. Mopar built the Hemi Darts and Hemi Barracudas. Ford built the Boss 429 Mustangs. All of them were spiritual successors to the Thunderbolt. The lessons Ford learned about homologation rules influenced their future programs too. When they built the Boss 429 Mustang in 1969 for NASCAR homologation, they built over 800 units. Not 100. They adapted. They made sure they exceeded minimum requirements. The Thunderbolt taught them expensive lessons about rule changes and minimum production numbers. Even the marketing approach changed because of the Thunderbolt. Ford realized that building limited production performance cars created mystique, created demand, created legendary status. Small production numbers meant exclusivity. Exclusivity meant desirability. That became the blueprint for special edition muscle cars for decades. Build a few hundred, make them special, price them high, watch them sell out. The Thunderbolt accidentally created that formula by being limited to 100 units. So what can we learn from the Thunderbolt story? What does it teach us about competition, rules, and the eternal struggle between innovation and regulation? First lesson: dominating too much can backfire. Ford built the best car. They won the championship. They demolished the competition. And they got punished for it with rule changes specifically designed to stop them. Sometimes being too successful makes you a target. The NHRA could not let one manufacturer dominate forever because it hurt the sport's competitiveness and audience appeal. Second lesson: homologation rules are a moving target. Ford built exactly 100 cars to meet the minimum requirement. The NHRA changed the minimum to 500. Rules change, goalposts move, especially when sanctioning bodies feel threatened by what you are doing. If you are going to invest millions in a racing program, you better have contingency plans for rule changes. Third lesson: sometimes the most expensive failures become the most valuable successes long-term. Ford lost approximately $200,000 on the Thunderbolt program in 1964. Massive money at the time. Corporate embarrassment. Program canceled. But those same cars are now worth hundreds of thousands each. The program that lost money in the short term created incredible long-term value and legendary status for the Ford brand. Fourth lesson: innovation always finds a way around restrictions. The NHRA killed the Thunderbolt program. But the technology, the concepts, the engineering lessons all continued in other programs. You cannot stop innovation by changing rules. You just redirect it into different channels. The lightweight race car concept did not die with the Thunderbolt. It evolved. We see this same pattern today in all forms of racing. Sanctioning bodies trying to maintain competitive balance. Manufacturers pushing boundaries. Rule changes to slow down whoever is winning too much. It is the same dance that has been happening since racing began. The Thunderbolt was just one of the most dramatic examples of how that dance plays out. 100 cars. $2,000 lost per car. One championship season. One rule change that killed the entire program. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. The car that was too good for its own good. Ford bet big, dominated completely, and got legislated out of superstock drag racing. But they created something legendary in the process. They proved that manufacturers could build purpose-built race cars and sell them to customers. They proved that lightweight construction and massive power was the winning formula. They proved that sometimes you have to lose money to make history. Those 100 Thunderbolts scattered across America became rolling legends. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a history. Gas Ronda's championship car. Butch Leal's White Rocket. Les Ritchie's record setter. These cars changed drag racing even though they only competed for one season. They influenced every factory muscle car that came after. Next time you see a lightweight special edition muscle car, remember the Thunderbolt. Remember that Ford took the risk first. Remember that they bled money to build winners. Remember that the NHRA feared them enough to change the rules. And remember that sometimes being too good is the best problem you can have. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen a Thunderbolt in person? What is your favorite factory drag car story? What other cars should have been banned but were not? Drop your stories in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into muscle car history, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about the cars that changed racing forever. Coming up next, the engine so powerful, NASCAR banned it for 40 years. Until then, keep it fast and keep it loud. Thanks for watching.